Jackie Reynolds, the CEO of one of the largest financial firms in the country, stood in front of the full-length mirror in her penthouse apartment. Dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, she hardly resembled the powerful woman whose name carried weight in the corporate world. But that was exactly the point. Jackie had spent years building her company from the ground up, breaking barriers as a black woman in an industry dominated by men. Despite her success, she was no stranger to the struggles faced by people who looked like her, especially when it came to banking. She had heard the horror stories of discrimination, and she had seen the statistics. But now, she wanted to witness it firsthand. Her plan was simple: visit one of the branches of her own bank undercover as an average customer and attempt to make a withdrawal. She had no idea what to expect, but deep down, she feared she already knew. "Are you sure about this?" her assistant Monica asked as Jackie grabbed her purse. "Positive," Jackie replied. "If there's a problem, I need to see it with my own eyes." Monica sighed. "Just be careful. If anything happens, call me." Jackie nodded, then took a deep breath before stepping out of her apartment. A private driver was usually her mode of transport, but today she opted for a rideshare service. Every detail of her disguise had to be believable. As she settled into the back seat of the car, she wondered, would they treat her the same as any other customer? Or would she experience the very discrimination she had fought against for years? Her heart pounded as the car approached the bank. She was about to find Monica adjusted the cap of her hoodie as she stepped through the gleaming glass doors of the bank she had built from the ground up. It was a strange feeling, walking into her own institution as a regular customer, but today wasn't about power, it was about perspective. The lobby was spacious, adorned with sleek marble floors and modern furniture. Large posters on the walls boasted slogans about inclusivity and top-tier customer service. Monica had personally signed off on those marketing campaigns. But as she approached the line, she quickly realized that the reality didn't match the promises. A tall man in a business suit walked up to one of the tellers and was immediately greeted with a warm smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I assist you today?" the teller asked in an overly enthusiastic tone. Monica, however, received no such welcome. She stood in line, unnoticed, waiting patiently as the line inched forward. When it was finally her turn, she stepped up to the counter and gave a polite nod to the young bank teller, whose name tag read Laura. "Yes?" Laura said curtly, barely making eye contact. Monica cleared her throat. "I'd like to make a withdrawal, please." Laura glanced at her with mild suspicion. "Do you have an account here?" "Yes, I do." Monica reached into her bag and retrieved her ID along with her bank card. Laura took them without a word, then frowned at the screen as she typed in Monica's details. There was an awkward pause before Laura's eyes flicked back up, her expression shifting to one of skepticism. "I'll need further verification," she said. "Large withdrawals require special clearance." Monica raised an eyebrow. She wasn't withdrawing an unusual amount. Something was off. "All right," Monica said calmly. "What kind of verification do you need?" Laura's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll need to get my manager." Monica folded her arms. "This should be interesting." Monica watched as Laura walked briskly toward the manager's office, her posture stiff with something that felt like discomfort, or perhaps reluctance. The young teller whispered something to a man in a navy blue suit, who glanced toward Monica with a raised brow before sighing and rising from his chair. As he approached, Monica recognized him immediately. Jason Miller, the branch manager. She had personally approved his hiring 2 years ago, impressed by his experience and leadership skills. But now, seeing his demeanor from the other side of the counter, she felt an unsettling shift. Jason offered a tight-lipped smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm Jason, the branch manager. I understand you're requesting a withdrawal?" Monica nodded, keeping her tone neutral. "That's correct. Is there a problem?" Jason took a quick glance at the ID and bank card in Laura's hands before handing them back to Monica, barely looking at them. "For withdrawals of this size, we need to be extra cautious. It's standard protocol." Monica leaned forward slightly. "Standard protocol? I've been banking here for years. This amount isn't exactly excessive." Jason's smile tightened. "Even so, we have to be thorough. We've had some fraud cases recently." Monica knew that was a lie. Her bank had one of the lowest fraud rates in the state, thanks to the security measures she had implemented herself. Still, she remained calm. "So what's the next step?" Jason exhaled, as if he were doing her a favor. "I'll need another form of identification, maybe a utility bill or a second ID." Monica crossed her arms. This was beyond protocol. It was discrimination. "Tell me, Mr. Miller," she said coolly. "Would you ask the man who was just here for the same thing?" Jason hesitated. The tension in the air thickened. "I just want to make sure everything is in order," he said. Monica tilted her head, studying him. It was time to see just how far he would take this. "All right," she said smoothly. "Let's play by your rules." She reached into her bag, her next move carefully calculated. Monica reached into her designer handbag and pulled out her second form of identification, her passport. She slid it across the counter with a calm, deliberate motion, watching Jason's reaction closely. He picked it up, his fingers drumming lightly against the surface as he examined it. The hesitation in his expression was unmistakable. He had been expecting an excuse to deny her, not a valid ID. Laura, the teller, shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, glancing between Monica and Jason. The silence stretched just a second too long before Jason finally cleared his throat. "Well, I appreciate your cooperation," he said, forcing a smile. "I'll just need to verify a few things." Monica raised an eyebrow. "I thought that's what you were doing already." Jason didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked toward his office, leaving Monica standing there, her patience wearing thin. She could feel the weight of other customers' gazes on her. Some were pretending not to notice, while others openly observed the situation with curiosity or discomfort. A few minutes passed before Jason returned, his expression unreadable. He handed her back the passport and her bank card. "Unfortunately, I still can't process this transaction at the moment," he said. Monica narrowed her eyes. "And why is that?" Jason sighed. "It's just bank policy. I can't disclose details, but we have to be extra cautious with large withdrawals. You're welcome to try another branch." Monica inhaled slowly. He was doubling down. She knew exactly what this was. She wasn't just being denied service, she was being dismissed. She glanced at the teller, whose discomfort was now evident. Laura refused to meet her gaze. Monica smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It was time to push back. She leaned in slightly, her voice steady. "You do realize I have full access to my account," she said, "and if I don't get my money today, there will be consequences." Jason's face faltered for the briefest moment before he masked it with indifference. "I'm just following policy, ma'am." Monica met his gaze, unwavering. "Then I suggest you call whoever you need to," she said, her tone sharp, "because I'm not leaving without my money." Jason hesitated. He wasn't expecting resistance. But Monica wasn't done yet. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. It was time to make things interesting. Monica held her phone to her ear, her expression calm but determined. Jason and Laura exchanged nervous glances as they watched her. She wasn't bluffing. The call connected, and Monica spoke clearly. "Hello, this is Monica Sinclair. I need to speak with the regional director immediately." Jason stiffened. The regional director? His eyes darted toward Laura, who looked just as alarmed. "Of course, Miss Sinclair," the voice on the other end responded. "I'll connect you now." Jason's confidence wavered. He had assumed she was just another difficult customer, but the way she spoke, her authority, her calmness, it unsettled him. Monica glanced at him, her lips curving into a knowing smirk as she waited. Within moments, a new voice came through the phone. "Miss Sinclair, what can I do for you?" "Hello, Charles," Monica said, her voice casual yet firm. "I'm at one of our branches right now, and I seem to be having trouble accessing my own money." Jason's face paled. "One of our branches?" "I see," Charles said, his tone shifting. "Which branch are you at?" Monica turned her gaze toward Jason, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "The Oak Ridge branch. Your branch manager here, Jason, is refusing to process my transaction despite me providing 2 forms of identification." There was silence for a moment. Then Charles spoke, his voice cool and controlled. "That's unacceptable. Let me put you on hold while I handle this." Jason swallowed hard. He knew what was coming. Laura's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted some papers on the counter, avoiding eye contact with Monica. Monica crossed her arms, watching Jason with quiet amusement. Moments later, the phone call ended, and Jason's office phone rang. He flinched before scrambling to answer it. "This is Jason speaking," he said, his voice unsteady. Whatever Charles was saying on the other end made Jason's face drain of all color. Monica leaned against the counter, tapping her manicured nails lightly. Jason was about to regret every decision he'd made today. Jason clutched the phone tightly, his face turning a shade paler with each passing second. Monica watched him with quiet satisfaction, arms crossed as she leaned casually against the counter. "Yes, sir? I understand. No, sir, I wasn't aware." Jason stammered into the receiver, nodding frantically even though Charles couldn't see him. Laura, standing nearby, looked like she wanted to disappear. Monica smirked slightly. She had dealt with this kind of treatment before, dismissed, underestimated, but she never let it slide. Jason's voice grew more desperate. "Sir, I didn't know who she was." He turned his gaze toward Monica, his forehead slick with sweat. "I thought she was just—" He stopped himself, realizing how bad it sounded. Jason's hands trembled as he set the phone down. His mind raced for a way out of the mess he had created. Laura, still standing behind him, looked equally horrified, but too afraid to say anything. Monica hadn't moved. She remained standing there, watching Jason with an icy calm that made him even more nervous. "Miss Sinclair," Jason started, forcing a nervous smile. "This was all a misunderstanding. If I had known who you were, Monica raised an eyebrow. "If you had known who I was? So you're saying respect is reserved only for people you recognize?" Jason's throat tightened. No, I didn't mean it like that. It's just—" He fumbled for words, but nothing sounded right. Monica tilted her head. "Let me ask you this, Jason. If I were a white man in a suit, would you have second-guessed my request?" Jason's face burned. "I treat all customers the same." Monica gave a humorless chuckle. "Do you? Because I was singled out the moment I stepped up to this counter. You demanded excessive verification, dismissed my ID, and humiliated me in front of an entire bank full of customers." The weight of her words settled over the room like a thick fog. Customers who had been watching nervously were now whispering among themselves. I was just following policy," Jason blurted, his voice weak. Monica took a step closer, her expression unreadable. "You're still making excuses. Instead of taking accountability, you're scrambling to justify your actions. That tells me this isn't the first time you've done something like this." Jason felt his stomach drop. Charles's voice suddenly boomed from the phone's speaker. "Jason, my office? Now." The entire bank went silent. Jason's legs felt like lead as he turned to Laura, but her expression was clear. "You're on your own." Swallowing hard, Jason stood frozen, the weight of his mistake pressing down on him like a ton of bricks. The entire bank had gone silent. Customers and employees alike stole glances, whispering amongst themselves. Monica tapped her manicured nails against the counter, watching him with a calm but piercing gaze. She had been in this position before, seen people stumble over themselves when they realized they had underestimated her. But this time it was different. This was her own bank. Jason cleared his throat, desperate to salvage what little dignity he had left. "Miss Sinclair, I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. It was never my intention to." Monica held up a hand. "Intentions don't matter, Jason. Actions do." Charles's voice, still coming through the phone, was razor sharp. "Jason, I want you in my office immediately after this call. We'll discuss the consequences of your actions." Jason's shoulders slumped. He knew what that meant. Termination was on the table. Monica turned her gaze to Laura, who looked just as shaken. "And you?" Monica asked. "Do you have anything to say?" Laura's lips trembled. I was just following Jason's lead. I didn't mean to disrespect you, Miss Sinclair." Monica nodded slowly. "You didn't mean to, but you still did, and that's the problem, isn't it?" Laura's eyes welled up with tears. "Please, I love my job. I didn't realize." Monica sighed, rubbing her temple. "You didn't realize who I was, but that's not the issue here. The issue is that you assumed I didn't belong." A heavy silence followed. Monica turned to Charles, who was still on the line. "Charles, I want a full review of this branch's practices. I want to know how often this happens." "Yes, ma'am," Charles replied. Jason swallowed hard. This was bigger than just him now. Jason's heart pounded as he stepped into Charles's office. The walls, lined with certificates and awards, suddenly felt like they were closing in on him. Charles sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. "Sit," Charles ordered, his voice sharp. Jason obeyed, his palms sweaty. He had worked at this bank for 6 years, always thinking of himself as a model employee. Now he felt like a schoolboy awaiting punishment. Charles took a deep breath. "Jason, do you have any idea what you've done?" Jason swallowed. "I made a mistake." Charles leaned forward. "A mistake? You humiliated the CEO of this bank in front of customers and staff. You racially profiled her. You denied her access to her own money. And you think this is just a mistake?" Jason flinched. "I swear I wasn't trying to be racist. I was just following protocol." Charles's eyes narrowed. "Really? Which protocol says a black woman in designer clothing with valid ID should be treated like a fraud, while other customers walk in and out without an issue?" Jason had no answer. His throat felt dry. Charles continued, his voice cold. "Monica Sinclair built this bank from the ground up, and you, Jason, decided she wasn't worthy of service. That's not just a mistake, it's a massive failure." Jason felt like sinking into the chair. Am I fired?" Charles sighed. "Corporate will decide, but if you were in my position, what would you do?" Jason didn't respond. He already knew the answer. Meanwhile, back in the lobby, Monica was still standing at the counter. She turned to Laura. "I need to know, is this how you treat all your black customers?" Laura's face turned pale. "I don't know." Monica gave a sad smile. "That's the problem." A tense silence filled the bank lobby as Monica's words hung in the air. Laura shifted uncomfortably, her face still pale. Employees nearby avoided eye contact, suddenly busy with their tasks. Customers whispered among themselves, sensing that something big was happening. Monica took a deep breath, her voice calm but firm. "I built this bank to help people, all people, not just the ones who look trustworthy to you. So tell me, Laura, how often do black customers face this treatment?" Laura hesitated, her fingers gripping the counter. I don't know. I don't mean to treat people unfairly." Monica raised an eyebrow. "Yet you assumed I was a fraud. You didn't even check properly before calling security." A nervous gulp escaped Laura's throat. "I was just being careful." Monica's eyes darkened. Careful or biased? At that moment, a young black man stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, looking at Monica. "I've been banking here for 2 years, and almost every time I come in, I get questioned like I don't belong. I thought it was just me." Another customer, an older black woman, nodded. "Same here. I stopped coming inside. I just use the ATM now because I don't want to deal with the looks." The room grew even quieter. Employees shifted, realizing the weight of the moment. Monica turned back to Laura. "You see, this isn't just about me. This is a pattern." Laura's lips trembled, but she had no words. Then the glass doors swung open. A group of corporate executives, led by a sharp-looking woman in a navy suit, strode inside. Her eyes landed on Monica immediately. The bank was about to face a reckoning. The atmosphere in the bank lobby turned even heavier as the executives approached. At the front of the group was Margaret Ellis, the regional director of the bank's parent company. With sharp eyes and an air of authority, she scanned the room before stopping in front of Monica. "Miss Reynolds," Margaret greeted, her voice measured but firm. "I received your call. I take it there's a serious issue here?" Monica crossed her arms. "More than serious. I was denied access to my own money. Your employee Laura treated me like a criminal, and I'm not the only one." Margaret's gaze shifted to Laura, whose face had lost all color. "Is this true?" Laura stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I was just following protocol." Monica scoffed. "No, you were following prejudice." She turned to the customers who had spoken up earlier, and they faced the same discrimination for years. Margaret's jaw tightened. "This is completely unacceptable." She turned to another executive. "Start pulling security footage from the past few months. I want to know how many customers have been mistreated." Laura's breath hitched. "Wait," Margaret cut her off. "No, you wait." She faced Monica again, her expression more serious than before. "Miss Reynolds, I assure you, this isn't how we want our branches to operate. If systemic discrimination is happening here, we will address it." Monica nodded but wasn't fully convinced. "Good, because if you don't, I will." Just then, a security officer walked up, whispering something to Margaret. Her brows furrowed as she listened. Margaret's expression darkened. "Oh, this is worse than I thought." Everyone in the bank turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Monica asked. Margaret sighed. "There's something you need to see." Margaret led Monica and a few of the executives toward a small security office in the back of the bank. The tension was thick as they stepped inside, where a security officer sat in front of multiple monitors displaying different camera angles from the branch. "Pull up footage from the last few months," Margaret instructed, her voice sharp. The security officer nodded and began typing. Within moments, clips started playing on the screens. What they saw was infuriating. The footage showed multiple black customers being questioned excessively, denied services, and treated with suspicion. One clip featured an older black woman trying to cash a check. Laura had refused and even called security on her. Another showed a young black man being turned away while a white customer with the same type of check was helped immediately. Monica's hands clenched into fists. "This is exactly what I was talking about." Margaret's face hardened. "Keep playing." Then a clip appeared that made everyone in the room go silent. It was of Monica herself from earlier that day, walking in, politely requesting her money, and being met with hostility from Laura. But what made it worse was how Laura smirked after denying her. Monica's jaw tightened. That wasn't just bias. That was pure arrogance. Laura, who had been reluctantly brought into the room, looked horrified. "I didn't mean." Margaret spun to face her. "Save it." Her voice was ice cold. Turning back to Monica, Margaret took a deep breath. "Miss Reynolds, this is undeniable. We need to take immediate action." Monica met her gaze. "Then let's start with Laura." Laura's face went pale. Wait," Margaret nodded. "Laura, you're fired. Effective immediately." Laura gasped. "You can't do this." Margaret's eyes burned with authority. "Oh, I can, and I will." Laura stood frozen, her face pale. "You can't fire me over this. I was just following protocol." Monica crossed her arms, her expression unwavering. "Your protocol only seemed to apply to black customers. That's not a policy, it's discrimination." Margaret turned to security. "Escort Miss Peters off the premises." Laura's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She turned to her coworkers, searching for support, but no one came to her defense. She had been exposed, and everyone in that room knew she deserved it. As the security officer grabbed her arm, Laura finally snapped. "You're making a mistake. I've worked here for years. This is my bank, not hers." She pointed an accusatory finger at Monica. Margaret's voice was cold and firm. "That's where you're wrong, Laura. This bank belongs to our customers. And Miss Reynolds," she turned to Monica, her expression shifting to one of respect, "is the reason we even have a bank to begin with." Laura let out a frustrated shriek as she was dragged out of the office. The door slammed behind her, leaving an eerie silence in her wake. Monica sighed, running a hand through her hair. "One down. But this issue runs deeper than just one employee." Margaret nodded. "Agreed. We need to overhaul our training, implement new oversight, and ensure this never happens again." One of the senior executives, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "I think it's time we reevaluate our entire approach to customer service. If this is happening at one branch, it could be happening elsewhere." Monica looked around the room. "Then let's do it. Starting today, things are going to change." She had come in undercover just to withdraw money, but now she was about to change the entire system. The next morning, Monica sat at the head of the long conference table in the bank's corporate headquarters. The room was filled with senior executives, managers, and compliance officers, all waiting to hear what she had to say. Margaret stood beside her, holding a thick folder filled with reports on customer complaints, discrimination cases, and unethical banking practices. "We have a serious problem," she began, her voice carrying authority. "What happened at the branch yesterday was just the tip of the iceberg. If we don't act now, we risk damaging our reputation beyond repair." Monica leaned forward. "We're not just talking about one employee's poor behavior. This is a culture problem. It starts from the top, and I refuse to let my bank be a place where customers are judged by their appearance rather than their accounts." A middle-aged man in a navy suit cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Miss Reynolds, we have policies in place to prevent this sort of thing. Maybe this was just an isolated incident." Monica raised an eyebrow. "If it were isolated, I wouldn't have personally experienced it, and these reports suggest otherwise." She tapped the folder Margaret had placed on the table. "How do you explain the dozens of complaints we've received over the past year? How many of them were ignored?" Silence filled the room. Margaret flipped open the folder. We're implementing immediate reforms. First, a mandatory retraining program for all employees, focusing on anti-discrimination and proper customer service. Second, an anonymous reporting system so employees and customers can report misconduct without fear of retaliation. And third, she turned to Monica, who finished the sentence. Random audits and secret shopper programs. If we find employees engaging in discriminatory practices, they'll be dealt with immediately. The room murmured in agreement. Monica folded her hands together. This isn't up for debate. Either we fix this, or we fail as a company, and failure is not an option. The news of Monica's experience at her own bank had spread like wildfire. Local media outlets picked up the story, and soon national news stations were running segments about the discrimination she faced. Social media exploded with reactions, some outraged, others skeptical, but all engaged in the conversation. Monica sat in her office, watching a live debate unfold on a popular news channel. This incident raises a crucial question, the host said. If the CEO of a bank can be treated this way, what about the average customer who doesn't have power or influence? Margaret entered, placing a tablet on Monica's desk. Our PR team is handling media inquiries, but reporters are asking for an official statement from you. Monica exhaled. She had been waiting for this moment. Let's do a press conference. No prepared statements. I want to speak from the heart. An hour later, Monica stood at a podium in the bank's headquarters, cameras flashing as journalists filled the room. She took a deep breath and began. What happened to me wasn't just about one bad employee. It was a symptom of a deeper problem. One that exists in many industries, not just banking. Customers of color, women, and marginalized communities face unfair treatment every day. And I refuse to allow that to continue under my leadership. A reporter raised his hand. Ms. Reynolds, some argue this was an isolated incident. How do you respond? Monica met his gaze. I have proof it's not. We've reviewed customer complaints and found a pattern. This isn't about one employee. It's about changing a broken system. Another journalist asked, what changes are you making? Monica outlined the new policies, making it clear that real reform was coming. This is bigger than me. This is about justice and fairness for every customer. As she finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. The message was clear. Change was here, and Monica Reynolds was leading the charge. In the weeks that followed Monica's press conference, the banking industry felt the ripple effects of her bold stance. Other major banks, now under public scrutiny, announced their own internal reviews and policy changes. Monica's decision to expose the discrimination within her own institution had ignited a nationwide conversation about fairness in financial services. Inside the bank, the atmosphere had shifted. Employees now attended mandatory training sessions on bias and customer service, ensuring that no one else would endure what Monica had experienced. The bank also introduced a direct complaint system where customers could report unfair treatment, with an independent review board overseeing each case. Meanwhile, David, the branch manager, had been terminated, along with several employees who had either enabled or ignored similar incidents in the past. As for Sarah, the teller who had denied Monica service, she publicly apologized, though the damage to her reputation was irreversible. Monica, however, focused not on retribution, but on progress. She created a diversity and inclusion initiative, offering mentorship programs for underrepresented groups in the financial sector. She also launched a foundation dedicated to financial literacy, helping marginalized communities gain access to banking services without fear of discrimination. One afternoon, Monica visited the same branch where it all began. This time she wasn't in disguise. As she walked in, employees greeted her with warm smiles, some nervous, others genuinely welcoming. A new branch manager, a young woman of color, approached her. Miss Reynolds, I just want to say thank you, she said. Because of you, I got this opportunity. Things are really changing. Monica smiled. That's the goal. A bank should serve everyone with dignity, no exceptions. As she left, she glanced at the sign above the entrance. It still bore the bank's name, but now it stood for something more. Fairness, accountability, and change. If you were inspired by Monica's journey, it's time to take action. Share this story to spread awareness about discrimination in banking and beyond. Support financial literacy programs that empower marginalized communities. Hold institutions accountable by reporting unfair treatment and advocating for inclusive policies. Encourage diversity in leadership by mentoring and uplifting underrepresented voices in business. Change starts with awareness, but it thrives with action. Let's build a future where fairness isn't a privilege, but a standard.